What happened at my sister's wedding reception will haunt me forever, but not for the reasons you might think. The crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows across the reception hall as I sat frozen in my chair. My 8-year-old son Mason's small hand clutching mine, the laughter still echoed in my ears, cruel, cutting laughter that had just torn through me like shattered glass. But what happened next? Nobody saw it coming. Not even me. Let me rewind to the beginning, because this story isn't just about a wedding gone wrong. It's about the moment everything changed. My name is Elena Hartwell, and at 34, I've learned to navigate life's storms with quiet resilience. When the elegant cream envelope arrived, Ms. Elena Hartwell and guest, I stared at it for a long time. My younger sister Sophia's wedding invitation, the sister who'd always been the golden child while I learned to live in her shadow. I almost didn't go. But Mason's eyes lit up when he saw the fancy script. Is that from Aunt Sophia? Are we really invited to a princess wedding, Mom? How could I explain to my son that his own family barely acknowledged our existence? That every family gathering felt like walking through a minefield of whispered judgments and sideways glances? Yes, sweetheart, I said, forcing a smile. We're going to see Aunt Sophia get married. What I didn't tell him was that this would likely be our last attempt at belonging. The Grandview Country Club sparkled like something from a fairy tale. White roses cascaded from every surface, golden accents caught the light, and a string quartet played soft melodies that seemed to float on air. Sophia looked radiant in her designer gown, every inch the perfect bride she'd always dreamed of being. Mason wore his only good suit, the one I'd saved for 3 months to buy. He looked so proud, so eager to be part of the magic. I'd managed to find a dress at a consignment shop that didn't scream clearance rack, and I'd done my makeup in the car mirror while Mason practiced his fancy dinner manners. Table 12, the hostess said, barely glancing at us. Near the back, by the service entrance. Of course, but Mason didn't notice. He was enchanted by everything. The towering cake, the fairy lights, the way Sophia seemed to glow as she moved through the crowd. She really does look like a princess, Mom, he whispered, and my heart ached with how purely he saw the world. Our mother, Patricia, swept past our table without acknowledgement. She was holding court at the family table, basking in compliments about her beautiful daughter's perfect day. When our eyes met across the room, she looked through me as if I were invisible. I'd been invisible to her for 9 years, ever since Mason's father disappeared the moment he learned I was pregnant, leaving me to face the family's disappointment alone. Dinner passed quietly. Mason charmed the elderly couple at our table with his polite questions about their grandchildren. I helped him navigate the formal place setting and wiped chocolate mousse from his chin when he got too excited about dessert. Then the speeches began. The best man delivered a harmless collection of college anecdotes. Sophia's maid of honor gushed about true love and fairy tale endings. I began to relax, thinking maybe we could get through this evening without incident. How naive I was. When Sophia stood, champagne flute in hand, the room hushed with anticipation. She looked radiant, confident, every inch the beloved daughter who could do no wrong. I want to thank everyone for being here, she began, her smile brilliant under the lights. This is the happiest day of my life, surrounded by all the people who matter most. I squeezed Mason's hand and smiled at him. For just a moment, I let myself believe we were included in that circle of love. I especially want to say something about my big sister, Elena. My breath caught. Mason sat up straighter, his face bright with anticipation. Around us, guests turned to look, and I felt a flutter of hope. Maybe this was it. Maybe this was when she'd finally acknowledge me as more than the family disappointment. The smile that crossed Sophia's face should have been my warning. Elena has always been such an inspiration, Sophia continued, her voice carrying clearly across the silent room. She's shown us all how to be strong and independent. After all, she's managed to raise Mason completely on her own,
No husband, no partner, just her and whoever's kind enough to babysit.
Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. My stomach began to twist. But seriously, Sophia's voice grew brighter, more theatrical. It's amazing how she's managed all these years. A single mother, unwanted by anyone, but still showing up and trying her best. The laughter erupted. Loud, sharp, merciless. I felt the blood drain from my face as heads turned toward our table. Some guests looked uncomfortable, but most seemed to think this was all part of the entertainment. Then came the killing blow. My mother's voice cut through the laughter like a blade. Well, she's damaged goods, but she cleans up nicely enough. The room exploded with laughter now, the kind that strips away your humanity and leaves you raw and exposed. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. All I could do was look at Mason's confused face as he tried to understand why everyone was laughing at his mother. "Mama," he whispered, tugging at my sleeve. "Why are they being mean to you?" I had no answer. How do you explain to an 8-year-old that cruelty sometimes comes wrapped in silk and champagne, that the people who should love you most can be the ones who hurt you deepest? I started to rise, my legs shaking, desperate to get Mason away from this nightmare. We'd leave quietly, with whatever dignity I had left. But then something unexpected happened. A chair scraped against the floor. Not mine, but from the head table. Sophia's fiancé, Derek Montenegro, stood slowly. The room's attention shifted, expecting him to smooth over the moment with some charming comment or graceful transition. Instead, his face was pale, his jaw set with something that looked like barely controlled anger. He took the microphone from Sophia without asking. The laughter died instantly. "Elena," his voice was quiet but carried clearly through the sound system. "Please don't leave." Every eye in the room was on him now. I stood frozen, Mason's hand in mine, as Derek stepped away from the head table and walked toward us. His movements were deliberate, each step seeming to cost him something. He stopped a few feet from our table and faced the crowd. "I need to say something," he began, his voice steady despite the tension radiating from every line of his body. "What just happened here isn't funny. It isn't family tradition or harmless teasing. It's cruelty, plain and simple." The silence in the room was deafening. "Elena didn't ask to be the subject of your entertainment tonight. She came here with her son to celebrate what should have been a joyful occasion. Instead, you turned her into a punchline." Sophia's face had gone white. Patricia was staring at Derek with naked shock, but he wasn't done. Derek turned to face Sophia directly. "You mocked your sister for being a single mother. You laughed at her struggles, made jokes about her worth as a woman, and you did it in front of her child." His voice never rose, but the quiet intensity was more powerful than any shout. "She didn't choose to raise Mason alone, but she did it. She worked multiple jobs, sacrificed her own dreams, and raised a kind, thoughtful boy who adores his mother. And instead of celebrating that strength, you turned it into shame." He looked around the room, his gaze touching every table, every face. "I've spent the last year learning about family values from all of you. But what I've seen tonight isn't family. It's bullying dressed up in formal wear." Someone gasped. A wine glass clinked nervously against a plate. Mason pressed closer to me, his eyes wide. Derek's attention shifted to my mother. "And Patricia, your comment about damaged goods?" He shook his head slowly. "That says more about your character than it ever could about Elena's." The room was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. Then Derek did something that stopped time entirely. He walked over to Mason and knelt down to his eye level. "Your mom is the strongest person in this room," he said gently. "Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise." Mason nodded solemnly, then whispered something only Derek could hear. Derek smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him all evening, and stood back up. He faced the crowd one final time. "I came here thinking I was marrying into a family. But families protect each other.
They lift each other up. What I've witnessed tonight is the exact opposite of everything I thought this family represented. He set the microphone down with deliberate care and looked directly at Sophia. I can't do this. I won't be part of this. And then Derek Montenegro, dressed in his perfectly tailored tuxedo, walked out of his own wedding reception. The silence that followed was suffocating. No one moved. No one spoke. It was as if the entire room had forgotten how to breathe. Sophia stood frozen at the head table, her perfect facade finally cracking. Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Other guests looked around frantically, as if someone might explain what had just happened.
But I knew exactly what had happened. For the first time in my adult life, someone had seen me, really seen me, and decided I was worth defending. I took Mason's hand and stood. This time, no one laughed as we walked toward the exit. People actually moved aside, their eyes downcast, as if they suddenly understood the weight of what they'd participated in. At the door, I turned back once. Sophia was still standing at the head table, her perfect wedding in ruins around her. Part of me felt sorry for her, but a larger part felt something I'd never experienced before. Vindication. As we stepped into the cool night air, Mason squeezed my hand. "Mom, is the wedding over?" I looked down at his innocent face, then back at the chaos we were leaving behind. "Yes, sweetheart. I think it ended exactly the way it needed to." The video went viral within hours. Someone had recorded Derek's speech, and by morning it had been shared thousands of times. The comments were overwhelming. Messages of support, stories from other single mothers, praise for Derek's courage, and surprisingly, criticism for Sophia and my mother. For the first time in years, the internet strangers saw what my own family had refused to acknowledge, that I was a person worthy of respect. Sophia and Derek never got married. There was no dramatic confrontation, no public statement, just a quiet dissolution of what should have been a lifetime commitment. I heard through family gossip that Derek returned her ring by mail. My mother called once, not to apologize, but to blame me for ruining Sophia's big day. I listened for exactly 30 seconds before saying words I never thought I'd have the courage to speak. "I'm done being your scapegoat, Patricia. Don't call again." The silence on the other end told me she'd finally heard me. Mason asks about that night sometimes. He wants to know why some people are cruel and others are brave. He talks about Derek like he's a superhero, and maybe in a way he is. Not because he's perfect, but because he chose to speak when silence would have been easier. 3 months ago, a small envelope arrived in my mailbox. Inside was a single photograph. Derek and a woman I didn't recognize, both smiling at what looked like a small courthouse ceremony. On the back, in Derek's handwriting, "Found my real family. Thank you for showing me what strength looks like." I kept that photo on my refrigerator next to Mason's artwork and good report cards. It reminded me that sometimes the most important moments in our lives happen when we least expect them, delivered by people we barely know. The wedding invitation might have brought us to that reception hall, but it was Derek's unexpected courage that finally brought me home. To myself, to my worth, to the understanding that I was never the problem. Some fairy tales end with a princess finding her prince. This one ended with a single mother finding something far more valuable. The unshakable knowledge that she was enough, exactly as she was. And maybe that's the most magical ending of all. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt unseen or unheard in a room full of people who should have protected you, know this: your dignity is not up for debate. Your worth is not determined by others' opinions, and sometimes the most unexpected heroes appear exactly when you need them most.